inflation is rising at double digits in many major economies around the world, inflation is coming down in America. In fact, this new report is the 5th month in a row where annual inflation has fallen in the United States. Inflation outside from food and energy, a key measure that economists use, also fell. Make no mistake, prices are still too high. We have a lot more work to do, but things are getting better, headed in the right direction.
President Biden this week touting some improvement in the economy, and yet things are not as rosy as he would have you believe. This week, the Federal Reserve hiked its key interest rate another 0.5 percentage point. Then the Commerce Department released a disappointing retail sales report for November. You know, November, the month where there's Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Retail sales last month dropped more than 0.5% from October. Now, that's actually a lot worse than the 0.1% drop that economists had forecast. So as 2022 comes in for a landing and a new year lies ahead, what can we expect from an economy that continues to struggle, and what will it mean for your finances? Let's ask for former Trump senior economic advisor and the author of Trumponomics, Stephen Moore, who joins me in studio. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Tom.
Appreciate it. Let's recap 2022. This was supposed to be the year that we came back from the pandemic, right? But it didn't turn out that way.
No, it sure didn't. Well, first of all, let's just talk about the last few days. I mean, you know, the old expression, you don't spike the ball on the 2-yard line.
That's right.
And that's exactly what the Biden administration did. They had a big, victory lap on the economy on, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then, of course, we got all of that bad economic news that you were talking about with one of the worst weeks for the stock market. I think people are really worried about 2023. But what's the legacy of 2022 economically? I think it's been the collapse of the stock market. You know, the NASDAQ is down over 30% this year, and all the other major indexes are down by 10% or more. So it's been a really lousy year for investors. People have lost a lot of money in their 401k plans, and I would say that's and then also the increase in debt. You know, Americans racked up more credit card debt, more consumer debt. You know, that's on top of the $31 trillion of federal debt. So I think those are the two things I'd talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because earlier this week, President Biden said that, and it's worth mentioning, that he lowered the national debt, and he said that he lowered it significantly. Listen to this.
We've done all of this while lowering the federal deficit in the 2 years we've been in office, $1.7 trillion. Let me say that again, $1.7 trillion we've lowered the federal debt. No administration has ever cut the deficit that much.
Okay, now, so first of all, it's important to note that the debt and the deficit are very, very different things. The statement's not exactly factual. It was even flagged on Twitter for being misleading. The debt has risen by $4 trillion. He's comparing the numbers on the deficit to the COVID spending year, during the emergency COVID spending year. So they're out of control. Talk to us about what that means for the overall economy.
It's so outrageous that he would say that. I mean, Joe Biden is by far the most financially irresponsible president in modern, at least in my lifetime. I can't talk about what happened prior to that, but there's nobody who even comes close. I mean, when you talk about in 2 years increasing the debt by $4.5 trillion, the massive spending bills that were incredibly unnecessary. You know, if he had just come in and left, look, I'm a little biased. I work for Trump and I helped him on the economy. We were set up for an absolute boom on the economy. Remember, we had the vaccine coming out. The last 6 months of the Trump administration, the economy grew by more than 20%. We were out of because the economy had reopened. So this is one of my big frustrations.
Yeah.
We're talking about a recession next year. This year we had the first half of the year we were in a recession when we should be booming. We should be growing by 4 or 5%. The crisis is over. So I blame that on just the whole series of Biden's policies that have been so economically harmful.
And if you take government spending out of the GDP numbers, we actually have negative GDP.
That's a great point. And so, government has been the biggest growth industry since 2020, since COVID hit. You know, I think that's been we're going to pay a very, very high price for that, not just in 2023 or 24 or 25, but your children and my children and our grandchildren are going to pay for these massive mistakes our country has made.
Mortgage rates have been on a bit of a slight decline. However, recent data from the Federal Reserve in Atlanta shows that housing affordability is perhaps its worst it's ever been nationwide. Retirement savings plans got crushed this year because of the volatility in the market.
Yeah.
Is there a particular sector that you are looking at that is kind of an indicator of where we may be going in 2023?
Well, first of all, on the retirement, you know, funds getting crushed, I was the one who did the study with my co-author Casey Mulligan of University of Chicago, which found that the average 401k plan has lost about $30,000 to $35,000 this year. That's a lot of
that's a lot of money.
Savings. And then you look at, you know, all of these other kind of, you mentioned about the housing market. I think that's the thing I'm really concerned about right now, because when you have look, 2 years ago when Biden came into office, the mortgage rate was less than 3%. It's at 6.5%, looking like it's headed to 7%.
Right.
Now that adds, you know, about $1,000 a month on a monthly mortgage payment.
Right.
I mean,
and it ultimately can depress values.
Exactly.
And that's where most people...
It hurts the buyer and the seller.
Yeah, and that's also where most people's wealth is tied up in their
Exactly.
homes. Real quick, because I'm running out of time. But the Republicans have a mandate of sorts now coming in, as the House Republicans at least, coming into Congress. What's one thing that they can do to set a tone for 2023 in terms of a direction for the economy?
Well, the
the
most important thing Republicans have to do is take a chainsaw to the budget. I mean, we have to cut at least $1 trillion out of this massive increase in the budget. But you know what? I got to tell you, I am angry at the Republicans right now. As we speak, they are talking about a massive another $1.8 trillion spending bill.
That's right.
Loaded with port barrel spending.
That's right.
That's not just the Democrats, folks, that are doing that. That's the Republicans too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right,
They love to play Santa Claus at this time of year.
We need to have you back as we get through Q1. Stephen Moore, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.